College. We are very pleased to have you here with us today. My name is Dimitrios Kyriazis. I'm the head of the law faculty here at NCH. We are very happy and proud to be hosting the book launch of Ursula. I'm not going to say much about Ursula or our legal superstar here because we have two law students that are about to introduce both of them in a very detailed manner. And in any case, I could never memorize the CV of Ursula, I'm afraid. But I want to say just two things. One, Ursula, a good, I think, metric to see whether an academic is successful is whether she is well liked by her students, right? Because in this culture of publish or perish and, a relentless focus on getting papers out, sometimes we lose focus of teaching and, our pastoral care and everything. So the best, I think, criterion or proof that Ursula is a successful academic is behind you, around you. All of your students are here, her past students are here, so this is truly a great success. And Ursula, thank you for agreeing to host the book launch here and have the book launch here. Now, as regards the Baroness Helena Kennedy, we used to work together, even if she never knew, because she wouldn't remember me, because she was the principal of Mansfield College in Oxford. I was a lecturer in law at Mansfield College in Oxford. And I remember when I was a student, before I started teaching, I was at a different college down the road, New College in Oxford, and I met her and we had a brief chat, and she was so friendly, but I didn't know who she was because I was at a different college back then and I was quite young. And my friends at Mansfield said, this was our principal that you were talking to. And I said, you're so lucky. I mean, I didn't even realize. She must be, very well liked by everyone, and I think that's great proof that you were indeed. So let me ask you to join me in welcoming Ursula, welcoming Baroness Kennedy, and I give the floor to Tony, who will introduce the Baroness.
Good evening, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, fellow students. I was extremely excited to receive the invitation to this book launch. All of us who have the privilege to be taught and guided by Ursula Smart cannot but feel a sense of pride in being part of this evening. But when she asked me to introduce Baroness Kennedy QC, I have to admit that I felt humbled and even more inspired. Helena Kennedy QC, Baroness Kennedy of the Shores, is one of the UK's most eminent lawyers and most inspiring public figures. She has an impressive legal and academic career as a criminal law practitioner and human rights lawyer, as a former principal of Mansfield College, Oxford University, president of SOAS, and now as a chancellor of Sheffield Hallam University, and of course, as a member of the House of Lords. She has chaired a number of committees, including the Human Genetics Commission, the British Council, the International Bar Association Human Rights Institute, a member of the World Bank Institute External Advisory Council, and a member of the board of the British Museum right next door. Baroness Kennedy has received honors for her work on the law and in human rights from governments and organizations in the UK, France, and Italy, and has been awarded more than 30 honorary doctorates. She has also authored a number of books, in particular one of Ursula's most favorite books, which she always recommends to all her law students, Eve Was Framed, and her most recent publication, Eve Was Shamed, where she describes her own experience as a criminal lawyer. She has created and presented award-winning television programs with frequent media appearances, including the creation of the BBC Sunday morning Andrew Marr Show, the television series Blind Justice, presenting the BBC's Heart of the Matter, Raw Deal on medical negligence, the trial of Lady Charlie's lover, and Time Gentlemen Please for BBC Scotland, which won the Television Programme Award category of the 1994 Industrial Journalism Awards. Helena Kennedy is one of Britain's most distinguished lawyers. She has spent her professional life giving voice to those who have least power within the system, championing civil liberties and promoting human rights. She has acted in many of the prominent cases of the last 30 years, including the Brighton bombing trial, the Michael Bettany espionage trial, the Guildford Fort appeal, and the bombing of the Israeli embassy. She has also acted in many homicide trials with a domestic setting, and she was the British member of the recent International Bar Association Task Force on Terrorism. Over and above her professional life, and perhaps as a continuation and practical application of her knowledge and skills, she is a patron of many charities and has found the time and energy to use her position to help, giving back to society and steering it towards a fairer and more just path. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Baroness Kennedy QC.
Tony, I'm going to have you write my obituary for me. I actually have also been introduced by a young woman on one occasion as Helena Kennedy, the lawyer who represents women and other criminals. It is a real joy for me to be here tonight, and it's lovely to be here at the University of the Humanities. And just to say that I have a particular reason for being here, and it's because I have such a high regard for Ursula Smart. She is a really terrific and wonderful person. She's a force of nature, as any of you who know her would agree. And I feel that I have been enriched by her coming into my life some 10 years ago. I just wanted to speak a little bit about why I think Ursula is particularly vital and important to the law. You've spoken about the great joy of being taught by her. And I can see people in the room who obviously share that, strong belief that Ursula is really one of the great law teachers, and I share it, although I haven't been taught by her. But I can tell you that I know from just having discussions about the law, reading what she writes about the law, that she would be a great teacher. And it's because she makes law so accessible. She really has a sort of magical way of using language that is not obfuscating, which actually allows an entry into a subject that can sometimes be very complex, and she can make it very alive for anybody. And I have just, in fact, gifted her book to a team of people who are working with me just now in the International Bar Association, because we've got a big project on in relation to media freedom. And the reason that we're doing this project is because I have a colleague in Chambers, Amal Clooney, and she was invited by the government to be the envoy on media freedom, because something has happened in our world in recent times, which is that there has been this incredible shift in terms of attacks upon journalists. And we've seen more journalists being murdered in recent years, more journalists being thrown in prison. I was recently involved in the ghastly business of having to go to Turkey because Khashoggi, Jamal Khashoggi, had been murdered in the Saudi consulate. And we went out, and I went there as the legal advisor to the rapporteur from the UN, and we listened to the tapes of what happened inside that consulate. And so that idea that you take out those who write critically about what you do in government, the idea that you silence the voices that can bring information to people about abuses of human rights, about the absence of democracy, about the ways in which sections of your community are being treated. The idea that you eliminate the voice of those who speak truth to power is something that should be truly alarming us. And it's very interesting because one of the things that is happening in our world just now is that we are seeing the rise of populism. We are seeing in so many places the governance of the strong man. And that often means that those who are fulfilling, taking on those positions are very often people who are narcissists and who have a very thin skin when it comes to criticism. And it starts by wanting to silence those who are your critics, to find ways of dealing with them, imprisoning them, rubbing them out, or whatever it is that you decide to do. But there's also the other thing, which is about buying up the media, making sure that they become sort of monopolized, and so that there isn't that richness and diversity of ownership of the media. And that you make sure that you do not have a media that might give different perspectives on what is happening in society. And so the concerns about what was happening in the media meant that the UK government and the Foreign Office had discussions with Canada, and the United Kingdom and Canada have led on this business about having a project which would be bigger than that. And now UNESCO has taken the sort of lead in this, and the International Bar Association's Institute of Human Rights, which I am now the director of, is actually acting as the secretariat and has got a legal expert panel. And I have gifted this book to them all to say to them, this is what you have to read about what's happening in our contemporary world around why media freedom is so important. And it's important because if you do not have freedom of expression and media freedom and the opportunity and freedom of thought, the opportunity to exchange ideas, even if they're critical of those who are in power, you do not have a free society, and the rest of your rights are meaningless. And so fundamental to any rights or rights-based order is going to be having freedom of information, freedom of the press, freedom of the media. And so I can't tell you how great it was reading your book, Ursula, because it was beautifully written, but it engages with so many of the issues that are contemporary issues for us that are absolutely new. The ideas about fake news, about the responsibility that journalists have to report truthfully and honestly factual information, and yet how that is somehow being eroded. But then the ways in which those who are decent and good journalists purveying truth to the public are often in places which have become authoritarian, suddenly are presented with writs of summons. They're arrested, they end up in prison, they're charged with all manner of things, criminal defamation, things that have gone out, which we've now eliminated from law here in the UK, but in many other countries it still exists. Sedition, charges of relate to official secrets, and so on. And in Pakistan, in relation to blasphemy. So the world over, there are real challenges to media freedom. Media law is very important for us as lawyers and potential lawyers to know and understand, because so many other freedoms come from this. And I just wanted to pay tribute to Ursula for getting this book out at such an important moment. It really is a wonderful book. She is a great teacher. She's a great writer, but she's also just the most delicious woman. She's just always fun to be with. And from the first time that I met her, I knew that she was fun, and which was why I was very happy to embrace her as a friend. So coming here tonight is a pleasure for me, Ursula. But I also pay tribute to your work and to your scholarship and to your teaching abilities and your way of communicating to the world something so important. So thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As many of you may know, Ursula Smart is the queen of qualifications. And as such, I shall now proceed to read just a few of her many achievements. Mrs. Smart holds a research fellowship in media law at the University of Surrey and continues her research and publications in media law with an extensive list of refereed journals in this field. She was awarded a visiting professorship at the Max Planck Institute in Freiburg, Germany, for her research into stalking and harassment, and continues to publish on the concept of the fear of crime and the media, as well as engaging in prisoner labor research. In the criminological field, Mrs. Smart has a long and esteemed research track record in international prison research and has acted as an independent consultant to a number of ministries of justice. She has single-authored 10 academic textbooks over the past 2 decades, books in the likes of Media for Journalists and Law for Criminologists. Mrs. Smart continues to motivate and push young aspiring lawyers to pursue their careers at the New College of the Humanities, the University of Surrey, as well as Portsmouth and West London University through her undergraduate lecture programs. And whilst Ursula Smart was teaching us 2 subjects, public law and English legal system, as well as assisting us with our CVs and spamming us with weekly emails of news about law and law fairs, and all the things we really need to know, we truly wonder when she found the time to write this book. The 4th edition of Media and Entertainment Law is widely considered one of the most comprehensive textbooks in its field, with past editions being sold across the UK and abroad. It is extremely popular in Scotland, as it includes a lot of Scots law in areas in which the law differs, such as in defamatory and court reporting. Not surprisingly then, the newest edition now bolsters some 700 pages. It delves deeply into subjects such as defamation and freedom of speech, privacy, ethics, and contempt, all overlaid with the latest case studies, legislation, and context. In this edition, Mrs. Smart has particularly engaged with the law of online libel, harassment, and harm, arguing that libel tourism has now migrated north, from London to Edinburgh and the Belfast High Courts, all jurisdictions which have not yet adopted the Defamation Act of 2013, which is part of the English defamation laws. Mrs. Smart's book, Media and Entertainment Law, has grown in content due to the ever-changing and fast-growing landscape that media and entertainment law covers. Her book is striking, as it covers a variety of topics in such depth while still maintaining a user-friendly and factually correct tone that it truly deserves its title of university syllabus staple. Besides collecting qualifications, Mrs. Smart's quasi-addiction to Westlaw is very well known amongst the students and faculty here at NCH. So it must come to no surprise that she double, if not triple or quadruple checked every single case featured in this book. She said it herself, if it hadn't been for Westlaw, she probably wouldn't have been able to write this book. And I do wonder whether this features in her acknowledgements. Overall, I believe I speak for all her students when I say that we're honored to have Mrs. Smart at our establishment. And even now that the 4th edition of her tome is hitting the shelves, we're pretty sure she's already on her next book.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Marie-Therese. Baroness Helena Kennedy, Helena. Dimitrios. Dear guests and students, thank you so much for taking the time to come here this evening. Thank you to the college and Master A C Grayling, who sadly couldn't be here tonight. He's flying off to Detroit as we speak. To Sonia Jones, who is a wonderful woman who organizes all these events. She couldn't be here tonight. And her team of college ambassadors who are here tonight. To Sanjay Nair, who helped setting up the audio-visual, although I think you can hear me. So I'm not wearing the microphone, for the refreshments as well. Thank you to Tony Kyriakides, one of my students from Cyprus, and to Marie-Therese Gumpert from Austria and San Marino for the introductions. Thank you to all for coming here today. I'm honored. I want to thank my editors and the book's production team from Routledge, Taylor and Francis Publications, who have seen this project through in less than 9 months. It is a beautifully finished product. When I write these books, I never actually see or indeed know how they shape up. And when the book landed on our doorstep, Mike and I share a birthday on the 7th of November, I thought actually that Dimitrios had sent me a case of champagne. But no, it was the book, and it surprised me that it was such a mighty tome. So thank you to my 2 editors, Emily Kindley-Sides, the Senior Commissioning Editor of Law, and Chloe James, who's here today. And finally, to Mike, my husband, Mike Smart OBE, who was actually awarded the OBE by the Queen for being one of those journalists in the field. There were about 25 years of our life where I only saw him on television, usually wearing a bulletproof vest. He has been in very dangerous zones, and more lately he's the founder of BBC Online. So he was the editor-in-chief until recently, and he's just the cleverest person I know. And when my students ask me, why do you not have a German accent? Well, I did have a German accent when I came over at the age of 17 as an au pair girl to Hull. Apparently I had a Hull German accent. And we got to know each other on the radio station, BBC Radio Humberside, where he read the news across the microphone from me. I had my own show. I was the continental voice of the BBC. My show was called From Me to You. So thank you, Mike, for supporting me once again. You always hope that this is the last edition. And for understanding why I leave our bed at usually 4 a.m., sometimes 3 a.m., to write the book. And I always say to him, books don't write themselves. Yes, it only seems like yesterday that we were here, and I see some of you who've supported at least 3, if not 4, book launches, so thank you very much. It seems like yesterday that we only launched the 3rd edition here in March 2017 with Sir Keir Starmer QC, former Director of Public Prosecutions. Little did Keir Starmer know in March of 2017 what was to come for him with Brexit.
Poor man.
I'm sure Helena Kennedy will now also be very much involved during the extensive post-Brexit lawmaking process in the House of Lords, in addition to her day jobs. That is, of course, if we do leave. Due impartiality is still required, of course. When I thought that the 4th edition of the book was going to be a simple rewrite of the 3rd edition, I was once again badly mistaken. The media landscape, as you've said, and its digital and online presence is changing dramatically almost from month to month. So, how many people still read a print newspaper here? Increasing numbers of us now read papers and magazines online, and most of the young will not buy or read newspapers at all, unless, of course, they're my students. They receive their news and much of their information via social media. So, how do we know what is mis- or disinformation? High-quality journalism is now, as you say, under serious threat, as never before, from the rise of clickbait and fake news. Most notable in this edition of the book is the ever-increasing coverage of regulators. That used to be a tiny chapter, and these are now 2 massive chapters in my book. We know that the Advertising Standards Authority regulates advertising. I enjoy reading the adjudications on the ASA website, a really good website. And I enjoy reading about the ads that have been banned and those that have been allowed every year, such as the Hello Boys Wonder Bra advert, or the hilarious Iron Brew adverts on YouTube. I've said that because there are many Scots in this room, and they're really, really worth viewing, the Iron Brew. And they really, I know my friend Cheryl is here, and I met her in the gym hundreds of years ago, at least 30 years ago, and yes, she did drink Iron Brew first thing in the morning. So without knowing, we would soon be heading for the polls in 8 days' time. I added a new chapter in the book covering election and party political law. These laws are now vastly out of date, and these current laws do not cover the digital age. Which means political advertising is not regulated. As we first experienced during the Brexit referendum in June 2016, resulting in the Cambridge Analytica vote rigging scandal, and a number of prosecutions by the Electoral Commission followed. My book explains how 87 million records were obtained and used online to try and skew the general election in 2017. Political advertising then remains uncontrolled and unregulated. Facebook is now controlling and censoring its own platform. An example is last month's controversy over the company's refusal to take down a Donald Trump advert attacking his Democrat rival, Joe Biden. In response, US Senator and law professor Elizabeth Warren, another Democrat hopeful, published an advert on Facebook suggesting that Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg had endorsed Mr. Trump. Apparently untrue. This type of electioneering is now widespread in the UK, where all political parties are currently engaged in overblown social media rhetoric. During the lead-up of our general election on the 12th of December next week, the Lib Dems produced a flyer which looked just like two genuine newspapers which came through our doors, the Basingstoke Gazette and the Andover Advertiser. But it was promoting their local parliamentary candidate under the banner of the Mid Hampshire Gazette. Katie French, editor of the Real publications, called the political advertising stunt an affront to democracy, exploiting trusted local newspaper formats for political gain. Facebook and all other social media platforms say they're committed to freedom of expression. But how do we know who's really posting? And what they say is actually true. How can our students and those who vote for the first time, for example, know the scale of political disinformation? What do we make of Twitter's recent decision to ban all political adverts? Remember, of course, that many printed newspapers in the UK have traditionally taken sides in political reporting. The difference is that those traditional newspapers, we know who's publishing them. And what is news, comment, and advertising is almost always well flagged. Online, anyone can publish globally, and very often without reliable identification. My law students are probably already bored with my reminding them that some lawyers could be replaced by robots. The far-reaching power of artificial intelligence, AI, now permeates nearly all areas of law. We know that social media giants use AI to flag posts for humans' attention. Major tech firms already employ around 100,000 humans to moderate online content worldwide. Yet, each new law Parliament passes will require more and more people to regulate and law enforce. The new book also engages with the possible regulation of online harm and parental choice, as the traditional watershed has now gone. Convergence of platforms today means an overlap of communication and media activity, which makes regulation extremely difficult, some say impossible, since they cross international borders. Can an individual still demand the right to remain anonymous when internet security now appears to be in the hands of social media giants rather than global legislators? Privacy and the right to be forgotten are continuing themes. In the book, I discuss a number of cases where UK courts have dealt with individuals asking the search engines such like Google to de-link and delist their names from their common algorithms. I continue being fascinated by celebrities paying media lawyers, shillings across the way, vast sums to keep indiscretions out of newspapers by super and privacy injunctions, such as the famous footballers John Terry, Rio Ferdinand, and Ryan Giggs. Or the gagging of alleged indiscretions at the workplace by super bosses. So is there still privacy in the digital age? The case of Sir Cliff Richard against the BBC established a new right to privacy, whereby Mr. Justice Mann awarded £210,000 in damages to the famous singer in the High Court in July 2018. The judge ruled on the BBC's reporting of a raid on Sir Cliff's home in Berkshire in 2014 as part of a police investigation into historical child sex allegations. The judge said that this amounted to a serious invasion of Sir Cliff's privacy, especially since he was never arrested or charged. The Cliff Richard case marked a significant shift in press freedom. It also meant that the important public interest principle and the public's right to know was now at stake. Of course, whilst print media may eventually fade in people's memories, easily accessible online publications, social media posts, and news archives can potentially remain in cyberspace indefinitely. Reputational damage to many, like to the nearly 80-year-old singer, Sir Cliff Richard, can be very long-lasting. As both Mr. Justice Tugendhat and Mr. Justice Eady repeatedly said in a number of cases, what is to be found on the internet may become like a tattoo. As Marie-Therese has already said, the law of defamation chapter could have been shorter. Had it not been for Scotland and I look at you, probably your fault, had it not been for Scotland and Northern Ireland not adopting the Defamation Act of 2013. This means some of the main common law cases had to remain in this edition, when I had hoped that the Scottish Parliament at least might have changed the law during my writing. It has not. Neither has the Northern Ireland Assembly, but then they haven't met very much lately. So arguably, I say, libel tourism, as Marie-Therese has pointed out, has now moved from the London High Court to Edinburgh and Belfast High Courts. The final two chapters deal with intellectual property law, and I focus mainly on copyright examples in the music and entertainment industries. This is an area of law which has benefited from AI, since it is now very easy to detect copyright infringement and illegal music downloads students via algorithms frequently used by the digital rights and music collection agencies. The emergence of online music distribution services such as Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music have created challenges for the music industry and the various royalty collecting and performance rights societies. Now, whatever you think of Taylor Swift, she has been a forerunner, preventing her songs being pirated, though she herself is now embroiled in a bitter copyright and licensing action against her own original label. Many artists have been accused of breaching copyright of others. Currently, Taylor Swift and her fellow songwriters Max Martin and Shellback are accused of copying lyrics from the 2001 song Players Gone Play by the US girl group 3LW for Swift's major hit, Shake It Up. Plagiarism claims have been made against numerous high-profile artists recently, including Lizzo and Sam Smith. The final chapter 10 had to be completely rewritten. At this point of the book, in July this year, the book had already been typeset, when the European Court of Justice provided, yes, the very latest ruling in the Kraftwerk case, which I have been following for the last 10 years. Joan, the copyright lawyer, nods from the World Service. Whether sampling amounted to a breach of copyright. German rapper Moses Pelham had included, without permission, a loop recording of just 2 seconds from a record called Metall auf Metall by Kraftwerk. It was inserted as a rhythm sequence in Pelham's song Nur Mir. The European Court ruled that this amounted to a breach of copyright, providing a once and for all ruling on sampling. I can assure you, my editor, who is here today, Chloe James, she was not pleased that chapter 10 had to be completely newly retypeset, and therein 700 pages of repagination of the whole book. However, Chloe, if you can hear me, because she's sitting back there, rest assured, I have already started writing the next edition because the area of law and my legal research in this is forever changing. I could go on. However, if you need to know more, the book is, as they say, available in all good bookshops and all the bad ones too, I hope. And if you can't wait, it's on sale in the next room, and apparently it's a bargain tonight at £30 instead of 40. And I will happily sign it. So thank you very much for coming.